Hey guys, welcome to the Musings of Maverick channel, where I'm your host Maverick, and today we're starting a new series called Kouya no Kotobuki Hikoutai. Its translation is something similar to the Kotobuki Flying Squadron of the Wilderness. It has an official English translation as well, called the Magnificent Kotobuki. As you might expect, I'm not going to use that. Seriously, like, what in the world does that even mean? And this is one of the series that I had decided I wanted to do a reaction series on, and so here we are. This should also be the last new one that I am going to start, unless some of the other animes of this season show some very promising signs and I can't ignore it. So, a little bit information about this series first. Its basic premise is that it's a bunch of girls in a flying squadron flying World War II era planes and doing dogfighting. So something similar to this would be like Girls in Panzer, which also uses a similar setting where it's a bunch of girls in World War II tanks and doing battles. Now, Girls in Panzer uses mock battles, while this one seems to have real fighting in it. Real bullets and so on and so forth. Now, this series is a little bit different from all the other series that I've done on the channel so far, so it's not exactly well known, and it's also not something that I know of and I'm a fan of, so why am I doing this? Well, I like the premise. Girls in Panzer was actually one of my favorite animes when it came out, and well, I just like the idea of a bunch of girls and in a warlike setting, especially using some more antique kinds of battle equipment, which is why I chose this one over Girly Air Force. Also, another good thing about this is that it's an original series, so that means it's completely original. We have no idea where it's going to go, and I feel like that suits my it suits my review format very well because I like to focus a little bit more on analysis and predictions, theory crafting. So, being an original work, that means that I can go ham on whatever I want to try. And I wouldn't feel stupid later because some people would come and correct me since they already saw the original works already. And well, some obvious things first, right? So it's not exactly a well. First of all, the animation studio behind it is not exactly top tier. Gemba is doing it, and they are not exactly a top animation studio within the industry. Their basic claim to fame is some Pokemon movies, as well as the Berserk animes, and those were not highly regarded. And also, all the voice actors for there's six main voice actors as far as I can see. They're all relatively unknown, and no disrespect, but they are at most B-list or even C-list voice actors. So, and apparently it's also going to be in full CGI as well. So then, these kinds of problems are piling on and on. However, it does have some things going for it as well. First of all, the director for this series is also the director for Girls in Panzer, so that's a major plus already. And they actually got a military advisor on board as well to potentially give them some consistency and authenticity in regards to the fighting or the planes, which was a major draw of the Girls in Panzer series, how they strive to be as accurate as possible to the actual capabilities of the tanks. And also the story writer for this is a well-known veteran within the animation industry as well. So I'm looking at this mostly as a sort of dark horse. Oh yeah, one also important thing that I forgot to mention. Apparently there's also going to be a game coming out within using the same name. So it seems like they're trying to build this up into a sort of franchise, right? So maybe something similar to Kantai Collection or similar works where they have the anime, they have the games, and then they'll eventually spread out to other stuff as well. So there is some resources, some production value being put into this franchise. So that makes me believe that it has some potential, and who knows, maybe it will eventually blow up and become something big. We always have to bet a little bit on, these kinds of high risk, high reward series. So I thought I would give it a shot. Now, as usual, my series will always go something like having a recap or introduction at the beginning, my blind reactions in the middle, and finally my thoughts and review at the very end. They'll all be timestamped below, so you can choose whichever part you would like to see. So, without further ado, let us see if this series is any good. So, let us begin in 3, 2, 1, play. The Magnificent Kotobuki. Like, seriously, what does that even mean? I guess they wanted to choose a title that wasn't too long, but you know, you really don't know anything about that. Like, what can you infer from that title? So there's apparently men in this universe. What the heck are they playing? 4? What? So this is sort of like a saloon Wild West setting? I guess this goes into the wilderness part. Okay. And these are our protagonists. They seem to be... like, these are CG. These are CGI characters. But the guys seem to be 2D characters. Huh, interesting. I have to say the voice actors are doing a pretty good job so far. You're instantly able to get a sense of their character just by hearing them speak. Some would call it generic, but it's actually not that easy to nail a character personality through their voices. Five years. 11 and 5/7? A Shiden? What are stars? Like kills?
ってんだろうな。
今のところ43、見込みと希望入れず。
43？嘘だろ。ありえねえ。ありえねえ。
ありえます。
彼女ら全員なら200を超えるよ。
Over 200. So each of them are over 30? I'm assuming that those are kills.
いい予感は当たらないのに、悪い予感はどうして当たるかね。はい、どうも。頼れる羽衣丸副船長、実篤です。
警報はレーダー波が照射されたことに対応した自動警報です。照射方位は340度、本線から2時の方向。この範囲に大型船の反応はありませんが、不明機、高速で接近中、高度600クーリル、運程は450クーリル、
Creo?
80度、風速4.5クーリル。本線の現在位置は
Is that kilometers?
14分、M の B30度17分。燃料残量は4107ボットルです。航行可能距離は現在の速度で695キロ。結論、
No, it's different from
不明機の速度
kilometers.
不明機の速度は165キロ。この高度だとゼロくらいとなると、やっぱり向こうは空賊じゃないの？どうにかして逃げられない？マリア、あなた靴買う？
Is this like an airship?
私もカバン無理。それと同じくらい無理。結論絶望的。副船長、戦闘機体の出撃許可をお願いします。
やっぱり
時間はありませんよ。
しゃあない。戦闘機体の出撃許可する。あとそうだ、総員戦闘配置。
What?
今回はイナーシャハンドルケツに突っ込んでかきました。
今回こそは敵襲ないかと思ってたのに。
爆はないですね。
Okay. So actually they weren't on the ground in the Wild West. Seems like they're in the air. I don't believe this plane is a Zero. It seems a little bit too fat for that, the fuselage.
よしよし、一気に星追加のチャンス。握るか。乗った。フェルナンド、祈ってくれ。祈りの言葉なんてとっくに忘れたよ。頼む。
Aren't you guys gonna change into some combat uniforms?
お嬢ちゃんたちの期待。3040だの200だのぶっこいといて、はやぶさだ。女に見栄はつきものさ。おい、構うな。へいへい。
Okay, Hayabusa. So not a Zero, but I guess you could call it the land-based equivalent of a Zero. So Zeros are typically flown from carriers, and they're most famous because, you know, of the Pacific Front, Pacific Battle. Whereas the Hayabusa is flown from land. I'm assuming this is the Madame they were talking about earlier. Alright, let's see. Well, not that I can tell anything. I've never seen the inside cockpit of a Hayabusa before. I'm gonna assume that all of this is accurate, since they actually have a military advisor on board. Okay, control checks. Rudder checks, flap checks. Hmm. Well, they seem much more dressed for combat. Really? Alright, nice cockpit view. I'm not sure if Hayabusas can take off with so little runway. Huh. Alright, yeah, so if it's a blimp. If you're using World War II technology, that makes sense. Alright, some nice sound effects here. Alright. I believe it said they were fighting Zeros. I'm actually not quite sure what this blue plane, or what plane the guys are flying. Oh, so are they like mercenaries? Pirates that fly Zeros. Okay. Alright. So these are our girls, I guess? Oh, that was nice. Not quite sure if that's accurate, but that was a nice maneuver. Zeros are known for their maneuverability. That's their biggest claim to fame. Range and maneuverability. I feel like this background music is a little too... Alright. I guess they're not really trying to make it seem like a tense situation. It's more to show like how badass the girls are. Alright, so yeah, it seems like they're more like mercenaries. Hmm? Is he trying to kamikaze the airship? Oh no. Alright. That seems a little bit modern. No, I'm not entirely certain about the mechanics of airships, but shouldn't putting in a few holes into the blimp part of it be enough to take it down? Or, okay, I think I get why. Their aim isn't to bring the airship down. They want to disable. Alright, sorry for the pause. My mic disconnected for some reason or another. Starting in 3, 2, 1, play. Okay, so just in the nick of time. Snake? Alright. Well, that was some good sound effects. Just on her tail. Yep. Alright. Your aim sucks, dude. Or I guess, yeah, to be fair, they're probably pulling some pretty hard turns here. What? Okay. I'm gonna have to look up the takeoff and landing range of a Hayabusa.
副船長ったら生き残りにきっと
Okay.
だと思うよ。でも気持ちわかるかも。何あなた、あんな文句たれがいいの？違う違う。戦闘機乗りの家族なんてやってらんないって話。ああ。調子が良くって身勝手で、スリルが好きでふわふわしてて、命知らずですぐにいなくなっちゃう。ほんとバカな人たち。レオナたちは？さあ、少なり町に繰り出して。
So there is a town. But...
ボーナスあげようと思ったのに。代わりにもらっときますよ。あなたバカじゃない？かもしれない。その昔、世界の底が抜けて、そこからいろいろなものが降ってきた。いいものも悪いものも、美しいものも汚いものも、いろいろなものがあった。そして今、再び世界は閉じられて、私たちはいろいろなものを失う。
Okay, so it seems that each of them have their own little story as well. And that was it? Alright. As usual, I'll take a look at the ending first. So I guess they're trying to use the airship as a sort of aircraft carrier. Why would you need to do that, though? To increase the operational range? But why would you need to do that? I'll talk a little bit more of that in my review part. No, so it's just a preview? Alright. I'm still gonna take a look. See what's up. And we still have some time left? Oh. So this is just like the credits that were added on by, I'm assuming, Sentai Filmworks, because they are the people who licensed this. Yeah, Sentai Filmworks. Alright. So I don't think there's going to be anything after this part. Okay, cool. I'll see you guys in the review part. So that was episode 1 of Kotobuki. And I can say right off the bat that if I were to describe my reactions to this in one word, it would be mixed, right? So there's some things I like about it and some things which I feel that it could do a lot better. So let's just go through it one by one. First off, I want to talk a little bit about the characters. So this is something that I will applaud them on, and that is, I also mentioned it within the episode, I think the voice actors really did a good job of nailing the characteristics of each person. So as I said, you could, just by listening to the voice, even without knowing anything that's happening on screen, you can kind of get an idea of what this character's personality is like. And coupled with the actions on screen, you can generally get, you can get a good sense of what they should be doing, what kind of tendencies they have, right? So you get the hot-headed, you get the hot-headed girl who's a little bit of a, I wouldn't say airhead, but she does things her way, right? She's impatient, those kind of stuff. You get the big sister type, who cares about everybody or who teases everyone, if you will. You get the more stoic leader type. You get that girl. You also get the Oju-sama type, the one who's a more firm and proper, high class. And then you also get the, I guess, the more reserved, quiet type, right? Silently observes, but she usually has some choice words to say. So everybody listens when she speaks. So you can get a good feel of all the characters for that. And as I said in the beginning, these voice actors are relatively new to the industry, so it was nice to see them do a good job of it. And if we're judging by the ending scenes, it seems that they all have their own respective backstories as well. So it would appear that we're probably going to explore each of their backstories within the different episodes. So that's probably something that will move the story along. So that's a, again, the character setting is, I guess you could say, a little bit generic, right? We've seen these archetypes before a lot of times, but there's nothing wrong with it if they can execute it well. Okay. And the second part is, let's talk a little bit about the setting. So this series seems to operate within, I guess you could call it, an alternate universe, right? So probably World War II didn't happen or something. So they're using tech from the 40s and 50s, but it doesn't seem like they are. Well, we don't really know, but we can see that tech-wise, they're at a 1940s, 1950s technology level. And it seems to be sort of like a Wild West setting, right? So this is probably where the wilderness in the title comes in. So it seems that they're operating in a place where there's little or no government control, and so it's everybody fending for themselves. And of course, within this episode, it seems that probably the airship is probably part of some sort of convoy or group, which has a presence, and so they hire these different freelancers or mercenaries, these flying squadrons, to escort them. So similar to like the Wild West, where you would have carriages who transport goods, and then they would hire cowboys and etc. to escort them. So something of that kind of setting. Now that is interesting, right? These kinds of lawless settings are the ones where you can have lots of different conflicts, so it serves as a good setup for the story, if you will. And I'm sure you can also get some, some outlaw behavior, like, and then isn't you're going to have some kind of dynamic between the outlaws and people of the law and stuff like that. So the setting part is, I guess, fine for me. Although it is kind of weird that they only use Japanese aircraft, right? So is it an alternate universe? Probably is, but whether World War II happened or not, remains to be seen, because their names are using more Western style names, but they're flying Japanese aircraft. Like what? And saloons. These are kind of, it's the Wild West, right? This is more an American kind of thing, but yeah. And then I guess the CGI, right? The CGI is a bit peculiar because it seems that it's a mix of 3D and 2D, and they're actually interacting with each other within a 2D and 3D setting. So that seems a little bit weird for me. I'm guessing that. Okay, so the reason why they would want to use 3D is probably because of the fight scenes, the dogfight scenes. It's easier to use 3D animation for that kind of stuff, and they can do some more complicated maneuvers within that as well. And also when they're touching on, the interior workings of the planes. So I get that, but in that case, why would you in non-battle settings also need to draw the girls using 3D as well, right? It's not like they're going to go in and start brawling with each other or something. This is purely an air combat anime. So, weird choice there. I'm thinking that probably this was a budget saving move. So since they have to animate the girls during the fight scenes anyway, the dogfight scenes, they decided to just use that and stick it on within a 2D background, if you will. So animate the 3D within the 2D and sort of like mixed 2D and 3D. I mean, I can't fault them for trying to save budget, but it does kind of feel weird. Like, I'm not a guy who has big problems with 3D animation. Of course, I do prefer 2D. I think it looks nicer overall, but it's not that big of a turnoff where I would refuse to watch a series just because it has 3D animation. But I do feel like the 2D versus 3D intermixed with each other is kind of weird, right? Not enough that it turns me off the series, but it's weird nonetheless. Okay, and the last part, and I guess what is the biggest part of this kind of series, is the realism part, right? So, this is part where I might be a little bit out of my depth, but I'll touch on the subjects that I do know. So, first of all, the planes they're flying, they look relatively okay, right? They didn't fly the Zero, they flew the Hayabusa, which is also known as the Army Type 1, I believe. So it's more of the Army variant of the... Well, I guess you can't call it an Army variant of the Zero, but if the Zero is the most widely known Japanese plane, then the Type 1 is similar to it, except it's used by the Army. And the two are often confused with each other as well. So, the things I did notice within this episode is that they retained their high maneuverability, which is their claim to fame, both the Zero and the Hayabusa, and also they retained their weak armor, if you will. So one of the biggest problems of the Zero and the Hayabusa is that they are very lightly armored in order to make them maneuverable and with long range. So even though the armaments that they use are also not that great, I think they use actually, I looked this up. They use a .308 round, so that's in a lot of countries that's like hunting rifle caliber, and so it's relatively weak, right? One of the reasons why the U.S. gained dominance over the Japanese air superiority, at least within the Pacific theater, was because the Zeros could not keep up with the heavily armored U.S. aircraft. So first of all, they have weak armaments themselves, so they can't pierce the armor of the U.S. aircrafts, and then because they have light armor, a few rounds would be enough to down a Zero or a Hayabusa. So we saw that here as well. They basically blew up or were incapacitated within like 5 or 6 rounds hitting their fuselage or wings. So that part, I guess, is fairly accurate to the real world. And then, of course, the elephant in the room is the airship, right? So having an aircraft carrier in the air, that reeks of fantasy, right? But because of this, I actually went to look it up, and there actually was a prototype airship that tried to serve as an aircraft carrier. In fact, the United States developed it. It's called the Akron class airships. So you can look it up on Wikipedia or something. But the biggest difference is that airship operates by loading and launching the aircraft using cranes. So they don't actually have a runway where the airplanes would take off because they're already in the sky and traveling at speed. All they need to do is use the cranes to take the airplane out of the hangar, and then just put them into the air, and then they can fly off. So definitely, the airstrip, the runway seems to be a bit superfluous. It isn't needed, but I guess it looks cool, right? In this series, in these kinds of works, you also have to maintain a certain level of fantasy so that it's cool to look at. Although, again, I highly doubt that they would be taking off on the runway, right? At least make it so that they just fly out and then drop off. That would make more sense than them. Actually, would it? Huh. Actually, now that I think of it, I don't really know. I don't. Okay. Anyways, that's a whole nother story. So it is plausible. Is what I'm saying. It is plausible for there to be a airship that has this kind of capacity. Um, and then also, I guess the part that is really out of my depth is in the dogfighting parts. So I don't play flight sims. I don't play these kinds of combat sims. At least for aircraft, anyways. The last aircraft simulator I played was probably something like A10. I'm not sure if any of you guys know it. It was made by Sierra, and that was like 20 years ago, right? Um, I definitely don't know enough about dogfighting to comment on whether the tactics that were used here are accurate or not. We're probably gonna have to get a guy who's played War Thunder or Digital Combat Simulator in here to tell us if this is accurate or not. I mean, I know some terms like angle of attack, like lift factor, load factor, or the G forces that are involved. I know those kind of stuff, but for the actual maneuvers, are they doable? Are they accurate? I really couldn't tell you. They looked well executed, right? There was this one barrel roll where I'm sure if any of you have played Star Fox before, you've probably executed it as well. So it's where you have two planes going along, and then the one in front does a barrel roll, and then essentially gets to the back position and ready to fire. Uh, that seemed out of a video game, but is it an actual maneuver in real life? I'm sure there's some variant of it, but it might not look exactly like that. So again, I don't think I'm the best to comment on that. As for the rest, the internal controls, are they accurate? That pre-flight checkup that they did, is it accurate? I don't I haven't seen a World War II aeroplane's cockpit before. I've seen modern planes, but I'm willing to give it the benefit of the doubt and say that it is probably accurate because that would be something fairly easy to verify. Um, one thing I do like is the sound effects, right? The sound effects sound pretty authentic to me. Uh, in fact, they are pretty good. However, I would have one complaint I have about that is that they are way too quiet, right? Airplanes should be loud, and especially for these kinds of series, if you're trying to go through the realism angle, you should make it in your face. One thing that Girls and Panzer did very well is they when they showed the tanks, immediately gave you an impact, right? So when you hear the engine roar, when you hear the shells whistling through the air, it feels real because there's a certain impact, a certain oomph to it that they put there. I mean, you could turn the volume on. Yeah, sure, but I mean, it's relative to people speaking. Their normal dialogue voices, and then when the tank barges in, you need to feel that kind of impact, right? So this is something I do believe that, and it would be relatively easy to do, right? Just in post production, turn the sound mix up. That'd be easy. So definitely, I feel like that's some part that could be tuned a little bit better. Now, as for so what do I feel of this series overall, judging from the first episode? Uh, I like the premise, and I like that they're trying to go through the realism angle here. But my current worry is that it's just not simply. So here's what I think, right? It's not quite flashy enough for people who like video games, say something like Ace Combat, right? I don't think it's flashy enough to draw in those kind of people. And even if it was a very realistic anime in terms of its dogfighting, uh, realistic is dull sometimes if you don't know what you can look for, if you don't know the intrinsics of what is happening. So people who are enthusiasts about realistic dogfighting. They might look at this anime and be blown away and say, "Oh, that looks so good," right? But to the normal layperson, we don't know what we're supposed to be looking at. And if we're just going by on-screen stuff, then it seems it doesn't stand out, right? I'm not saying that it's bad or anything, but it doesn't specifically stand out. And I already think that I maybe know a little bit more than the average layperson, right? Because I do watch a few flight sims, although they're more modern based instead of these kinds of World War II based ones. So, like I said, I know some terminology, I know some things to look for, but even then, I feel like I can't really comment on how good this was executed or not. And the good thing about, I'm always going to refer to Girls in Panzer because I think it's a similar concept. What Girls in Panzer did very well was because of the setting, they were newbies. So it managed to step by step walk you through, different kinds of tactics, what to look out for, and if something is really impressive that the opposing team is doing or the opponent is doing, they would point that out, and so you as a viewer, you could know, oh, so that is the criteria that we're going to be looking at. That is high level, and this is low level. We have something to compare, right? And I feel like that's not done good enough here. I mean, of course, we do see them basically kicking ass and completely wiping out the opposing squadron. But because of this, also, you really don't know if it's good or not, right? I'm under the impression that the enemy within this episode, they seem like NPCs. Like, I'm fairly certain that if you really are a skilled or experienced combat pilot, you wouldn't just be sitting ducks like that. It would probably be a lot more sophisticated and complicated with the maneuvers that they pull and the tactics that they use, especially in terms of formations and whatnot. So this one, again, maybe it's just because this is the first episode, it's an introductory episode, so they don't want to go too into detail. But I feel like it's exactly because it's an introductory episode, you need to make sure, like, who exactly is your target audience, right? It doesn't seem like it's going for the moe factor, right? It's not like Girls in Panzer. It doesn't have that kind of moe factor to it. It doesn't seem newbie friendly enough for casual viewers. So is it only purely appealing to the diehard realistic flying types? And if that was so, then this would have to be a niche anime, right? Normal viewers wouldn't be able to appreciate it. So again, maybe it's just the first episode, but definitely if this is your introductory episode, I feel like they could have done better to provide a more compelling hook. So this turned out to be a longer review than I thought, but this is my thoughts on this episode so far. Will I be making a series of it? Well, I will be watching another 2 or maybe 3 episodes of it, right? We have the so-called 4-episode or 3-episode, how should I call it? 3-episode rule or 4-episode rule, where you have to at least watch that much to know if the series is good or not. So I'm going to continue watching on, but so far I'm not that impressed. So let me know what you guys think. If any of you guys are flight sim enthusiasts or know a bit more about World War II dogfighting, comment and let me know if this is actually realistic or not. Because I'm not going to sit through, like hours and hours of flight lessons in regards to World War II aerial combat. So, anyways, this has been Mavry, and I'll see you guys next time.